3.1 is algebraic expressions. An algebraic expression, so we're talking about this term right here, is an expression that may contain numbers, operations, and symbols. Parts of an algebraic expression are called terms. And here's an example. If I had this as an algebraic expression, 5p plus 4, the terms are all the different things that are in here. So let me explain those to you. So they're color-coded. The red 5 is a coefficient. It's a coefficient because the numerical factor of a term that contains a variable. So because the 5 is next to the p, it's a numerical factor, which is the number, of a term that contains a variable, and p happens to be our variable, which we'll talk about next. That means that 5 is our coefficient. A symbol that represents one or more numbers is called a variable. So this is the symbol that could represent a number. We don't know what number it represents, so that's why we call it a variable, and we use a letter. So my coefficient is the number that is next to a variable, or a letter, and our letter is the variable. It's a symbol that represents one or more numbers. A term without a variable is called a constant. So this number has nothing next to it except for the operation, which doesn't matter. So this is just a number or a term without a variable, so it's called a constant. These three pieces of information, these three terms are extremely important because you're going to have to tell me what each of them equal, what a coefficient is, what a term is, what a constant is. So make sure you know this page. It's really helpful if you color code it like I did. Example 1 is called parts of an algebraic expression. So exactly what I was just talking about. You're going to need that other page that you just wrote down, and that will help you with this part. So you need to identify the terms, coefficients, and constants in an expression like this, 5x plus 13. So thinking about the terms, they're anything besides the operation, and the operation happens to be the plus sign in here. So our terms happen to be anything in this problem. So 5x, we represent it together, and then you would just represent it with a comma, and then 13. We don't put 5x plus 13. We're talking about what are the terms. There's two terms in here. There's 5x and there's 13. My coefficients, if you remember, a coefficient is a numerical factor of a term that contains a variable. So which one contains the variable? My 5x does. So 5 is my coefficient because it's the numerical factor in that term. My constants are the ones that are all by themselves. It's a term without a variable. So my constants would be 13. There's only one. Let's try another one. So looking at the expression 2z squared plus y plus 3. This one's a little trickier. So my terms, okay, we just list out all of our terms. Well, together we have 2z squared. The next one is y. Whenever there's a variable all by itself, it becomes a 1. So it's 1y. Because 1 times whatever y equals will always equal whatever the y equals. So let's say it was 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. And then, whoops, our last one is 3. So those are our three terms that we're dealing with. Anytime you have a variable by itself, always put it in with a 1. So that means our coefficients, that's what changes our coefficients. Remember, being our coefficient is a numerical factor of a term that contains a variable. We have two of them that contain variables. So 2, because there's a z squared, you just represent it with 2. And we have 1, because we have 1y. And then 3 is all by itself, which means it's a term without a variable. So our constant is a 3. A little tricky because this one's going to throw you off the most. Terms are all of them. Coefficients are the ones that are right next to a variable, the number right next to a variable. And if there's a variable by itself, okay, we add it in as a 1. And then our constants are the ones without variables. There will be questions on your quiz and your test that are identical to this, saying, please tell me what your terms are, what are your coefficients, and what are your constants. So you need to know those terms in order to do well on those problems on the test or the quiz. Example 2 is writing algebraic expressions using exponents. So our algebraic expression is d times d times d times d. Just as a refresher, an algebraic expression is an expression that may contain numbers, operations, and one or more symbols. So here we just have 4 symbols. So what you would do to solve this is you would just say, because d is used as a factor 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, we say it equals d to the 4th power. Because whatever d equals, we would multiply it times itself 4 times if it was raised to that power anyway. So let's look at one more. 1 and 5/10 times h times h times h. So what that would be is we would put down our 1 and 5/10 h, because we know when there's a variable next to a number, it means multiplication. And how many h's were there? There was a total of 3. 1, 2, 3, so that becomes our exponent. Let's try one more. So we have 9 times k times k times k times k times k. So we leave our 9 because there's nothing else to solve with that. We make it so it's multiplied by k. And that's a bad k. Sorry. Try that again. That's much better. And how many k's are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it would be to the 5th power.